everyone, my name is Gazal and welcome to Milaap's Coffee Conversations. Milaap is a social support group that aims to provide an unbiased and safe platform for non-custodial families and parents to speak, connect and support each other through our journeys. I started this group a year ago, born out of my own experience with estrangement, as I realized there is little and almost no help and understanding around topics of estrangement, parental alienation, and co-parenting. I'm happy to present Coffee Conversation, a new initiative that we started a couple of months back to talk about things that matter. I'm very happy to welcome my co-host for today's evening, Arjun, who's been a close buddy for over 30 years, a confidant, and of course, a very senior person in the world of journalism who has more than 13 years of experience with the broadcasting service. He's also the India representative for the American Jewish Committee's Asia Pacific Institute, where he's responsible for spearheading AJC's interests and goals in the region. Arjun, welcome aboard.
Thank you, Gazal.
Today's guest is a very eminent lawyer and a senior advocate, Supreme Court of India. Dr. G. Venkatesh Rao has been practicing across the courts of India as an independent counsel for 30 years. He's been counsel in several high-profile matters, both for domestic and international corporate entities and organizations. He's been an honorary professor and visiting faculty in departments of law, political science, business, and commerce, and has lectured in about 15 universities around the world. He's been an office bearer, both elected and appointed, of organizations worldwide, addressing UN organizations, conferences, etc. Notably, Vice President, Global Education Law Forum, Amsterdam, and the World Peace Congress, Bangkok. He's been a recipient of numerous awards like the Bharat Gaurav Award 2016, Protector of Democracy Award 2009, National Bar Award 2008. Very honored to have you here, Dr. Rao, with us. You've been a great mentor, of course, in my personal life as well as my spiritual journey. I'm very happy to welcome you to Milaap's Coffee Conversation.
Hey, it's my pleasure, Gazal. I'm very happy to be associated with your initiative, which I can see is greatly beneficial to couples who are estranged and have children. And I'm happy to contribute whatever I can for this initiative. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
So we just completed a year. We celebrated our first anniversary in April. And we are doing our bit to influence and support the lives of more than 50 parents.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much. Let me invite Arjun to set the context and talk a little bit more about what we are going to be speaking about today. You've been a huge mentor and a huge force for me during my legal process as well as my spiritual awakening in life. So big thank you to that. And I'm very happy that you're here speaking for Milaap and on Milaap today.
My pleasure too. My pleasure too.
Right. So I'll invite Arjun to set the context and share a little bit about what we are going to talk.
Thank you, Gazal. Thank you, Dr. Rao, for joining us for this very important subject. It's a subject which it exists around the world and more so in India, but considering the societal aspects of such a subject where even divorce and other such related subjects are not yet seen in a very positive light, that there is something that somebody has done wrong, rather than look at the options of, rather than look at what could be fixed or what could be done right from this action. Unfortunately, where the damaged party comes in most cases, or rather the party that is least at fault, is children. And so co-parenting is a subject which has not yet been delved in a greater detail. No regulations as such have come into it. Some are coming in, etc. So that's why we wanted to get your wise counsel about what is your opinion on a whole bunch of related subjects on co-parenting. Let's get down to the most basic part. That is, despite a strong family value in many cases, even in the case of a joint family, not the fault of a nuclear family or something, religious counseling in many cases, and obviously a deep desire as a parent as any parent, to give them the best that they can give in terms of values, etc. Why is it that families, many couples, are heading for a divorce in the first place?
You see, modern day life, unlike a few decades ago, is a different. It's a fast-paced life. Is different in many ways because, like good old days, women were not. They were not given the opportunity to educate themselves. They remained mostly at home and homemakers. But today's world, the women are as good, and they have the opportunity of working, performing well, and shouldering responsibilities many times better than the men. So the basic changes that have come is primarily because of the liberation and emancipation of women in performing many of the duties and demands of modern day society. So that lies where, earlier they were subjugated, the spouse, and also they were joint families. So the women of the family were kept oppressed, if I may say so, or were not given enough liberties to do what they felt like, and they remained in a sort of in a closed environment where their aspirations and their ambitions and their desire to achieve were not taken into account. Today, they are equal partners. There's many times, like I said before, are better, and they have their own challenges. They have the professional arena, or where they are their work area, where they need to be performing their tasks, and they need to be dealt with as equal partners rather than the kind of system that we had before. So many times what happens is that the parents of either of the spouse are not probably as modern, probably did not see the kind of world in the same manner in which the parents of the other spouse may have seen. So all of these leads to conflicts of understanding. It leads to compatibility issues, where the spouses are not able to see eye to eye, or their families are not able to see them in the manner in which they ought to be seen in a modern day environment. And many times they do not have, perhaps they do not even have the vision or the mental faculties to be able to, cope with the newer developments that are taking place. So these leading to compatibility issues, and therefore disputes, and unable to deal with the disputes, and in perhaps in a more civilized manner, and therefore they lead to other kinds of difficulties, and finally separation and divorce are the result of such kind of difference of opinion, and not being on the same page on many issues.
Dr. Rao, despite people spending so many years together, the average married age of Indians is still much higher than that in the West. Despite being married for, let's say, a number of years together, why are people not able to co-parent post their divorce? So they've agreed to get in for a divorce. Why is co-parenting so difficult for people when they have the same children they've given birth to?
Co-parenting becomes a very difficult task. See, basically, although my discipline and my main field of area is corporate laws and other commercial areas of law, international law, etc., but I have seen numerous cases where I have advised many people, because it isn't a very complicated branch of law, except it's complex because of a variety of things, various different kinds of scenarios. Otherwise, the law is pretty much simple. So I was able to advise over the years many couples and friends, only out of interest, only out of my knowledge of and understanding of this branch of law. Now, what happens is that from my experience, what I've seen is that either of the spouse wants to take charge of the child. they do not want to share the the child with the other. They feel that what they stand for, what they believe in, and what they are their virtues or their principles, etc., are what the child should imbibe. And they don't feel that there is anything that it's only if you might call a occupational hazard of having to send the child to spend some time with the other spouse. The spouse with whom the child is always feels that really in reality the child does not require any kind of any kind of tutelage or any kind of inspiration or support from the other spouse. Now, given that situation, it's only natural, because they are already in dispute, and the child having been born to both the parents, if in ordinary circumstances would grow as a child who is sharing everything of both the parents. But here is a situation that the parents are separated, or they are divorced, or separated even, or whatever, and they are living and the child needs to, by law, go and spend time with the other parent, and have the joy of sharing his life and his and his time with the other parent with whom he is not in custody. So therefore, given the attitude, because there's already a dispute, co-parenting becomes difficult. And I've seen in numerous cases the parent with whom the child is living or has custody tries every trick under the sun that the child should not go and meet the other parent. And it is a bitter feeling that they have in their minds, and they play every game and try every trick to deny the other parent the joy of the child, and to spend time and help in his growth and development. So that is something which is an individual issue, which both parents must try to reconcile. That yes, we have been married for some time, we've had children, the child belongs to both of us, and hence the child should be given the opportunity to spend time with both of us, and it would be left to him to decide what he takes from either of them, in terms of values, in terms of education, in terms of wisdom, in terms of every other thing that the one of the parent or either of the parents have to offer. So you should, I guess, that is something that parents, educated couples should think very carefully and be a lot more generous while dealing with the child, because the child is, after all, a sensitive young person, and who has a long life ahead of him, and it is his interest that both the parents must have in their minds, and they must become ideal parents for the child also, despite their disputes.
I think that's very beautifully put, and it's a very strong message, something that we have been trying to do at Milaap as well, to raise awareness about the cause of co-parenting, not just within the group members, but also in the public. I think, thank you for saying that. That just reiterates what we believe in very strongly. Dr. Rao, over the years, like you said, you've seen a lot of couples, friends, as well as you must have seen a lot of clients also go through this. Do you see a trend towards co-parenting, or do you see people getting more resentful towards each other and not being able to co-parent?
Well, I guess, you see, this is it's education for the couples, that it must be an eye-opener. It must sort of enlighten the couples also, the kind of work that you're doing, and trying to ensure that the child or the children get the best from both the parents, and they set an example as ideal good parents for the children, so that they have a bright future. So I think see, civilization and modernity and advancement also goes with it, uh, the learning to cope with unique situations which were not there before. Now, coping with those situations comes from people like you, organizations like you, which are, which are trying to enlighten the couples to, in a sensible way, in a manner in which they can understand that the child's future is the most important thing, and society will judge you. Society will judge you as to how good you have been a parent despite being separated. You may fault and you may blame the other parent, the other spouse for the whole parting of ways. But if finally, if there are faults to be found on your side, even as a parent, that would go to show that you have been the person whose actions are responsible for the breaking up of the family. So I think it's very important to drive home the point to all couples that should you not be, an ideal parent and do that which is required in a sensible, decent way towards the child and towards the other spouse after separation, you will be judged. And that's a very important aspect, because most people do not want to be seen as the persons who are either the troublemakers or who are responsible for the division of the family and the affecting of the child's future and interest, because all of this goes to affect the child's mental makeup. And that's very important, and any parent who has the interest of the child will not want to subject the child to such a, such a scenario where he or she, where the child finds it completely, a horrific scenario of this kind of dispute that he's being, coming in between. He's coming in between the crossfire of the parents. That has to be avoided. And the very important thing is that parents' education and enlightenment, like I said, is much be done by way of digital media like this, by way of the writings, by way of even interaction. It's very important. And I find that that some of the parents that I have met did, they sort of were very, very civil in saying that the marriage didn't work, but let's be very civil with the children and see what can be done for them. So it is very important that these kind of examples are also brought to the fore by organizations like you, where happily perhaps the separated spouses have led and have very diligently ensured that the child is shared by both of them. And, I've known many cases where the child goes happily to both the parents, and they don't talk about each other's, whatever as bygones have been bygones, and yet they give the best to the child, and he enjoys going to either of the parents. And even after growing up, he spends equal time with both the parents, and they are civil in not mentioning anything which was untoward or which was a bitter experience with either of the parents.
Yeah.
Dr. Rao,
Thank you
that's
so
an
much.
interesting point that you have raised on this point, because especially when it comes to younger children who preteen children who don't really understand what is going on or what happened, or why does mommy or daddy now live in a different house. Sometimes, unfortunately, and it's not their fault at all, sometimes they think that they have done something wrong because of which daddy and mommy are no longer together, etc. That also happens. It's a mind of a child.
The children are very impressionable. They're very young and
that is so. My question in this context would be asking a child about the terms and conditions of how they would be comfortable of basically of joint custody, of sharing, co-parenting, co-sharing of going between houses? Would you be willing to stay in mama's house from Monday to Friday and then with daddy over the weekend, or vice versa? How does that exactly work up till, and up till when does it work, this kind of a thing?
You see, the child till he or she attains majority, that is the age of 18, can be in custody of one of the parents, and if there are certain agreements or certain acceptance of certain schedules, let's say, by way of a court order, etc. They can be adhered to till the age of 18, because the child is a minor, and the court, in their wisdom, decides the terms of the custody of the child and the visitation rights. They call visitation rights. Now, once that is done, and you see these days, if you will notice, I don't know, some of you may have a little grown-up children also. After they cross, the moment they get into their teens, after the age of 10 or 11 or 12, the child, by himself or herself, becomes quite wise. I would say that children start having a mind of their own by the time they enter the teens. That is, after 11, 12, the 13 being the first. So by 11, 12, they seem to have a fairly good idea of many things, as a matter of fact. And we should not discount the child's ability to discern what is right or wrong for himself, and where he feels. It's not, suppose if a child wants to stay with the father, it is not, need not necessarily be a bad reflection on the mother. It's just the choice of the child. He feels comfortable, he feels closer to one of the parents. And this is normal and natural, even where the couples are living together. The child is bound to feel a little more attached, where he finds himself more in terms of, either his thinking or, because the child is an amalgam of genes of both, genetically speaking. So naturally, there will be something which he feels more comfortable with either of the parents. So the child is going to, by birth, congenitally, he may have an inclination to either of the parents. It need not a reflection on the other parent being bad or inadequate or any of those things. Simply, first point. Second point, that even if he feels inclined and he feels that he is more comfortable with the other parent for other reasons, where he may not have he may veer towards the other parent. Or while he is going and for visitation rights, meeting his the parent whom he is not residing with, he may want to spend some time, he may want to meet once a week, he may want to meet once a month. Please understand that. It is there when you are able to understand the child, whoever the child has the custody or to whom the child is coming, that the child has a mind of his own and has a persona of his own and a soul of his own, which needs to be left free. And it need not be, the expression that we use in common parlance is cramp his style. The parents should be mindful, and those who are coaching or counseling or spreading these things must definitely ensure that the child's innate abilities and inclinations should not be trampled upon, and he or she, the child, should be allowed to grow in a manner in which he or she feels comfortable. And that takes a lot of wisdom, a lot of care, a lot of attention and understanding. And it also is important that the institution in which the child is going, because now, and as much as parents are enlightened and all the institutions are also enlightened, they know that a particular child comes from a home where he or she doesn't have both the parents together, and an effort must be made by either of the parents or both of them or whatever with the teachers of the child to say that, I'm a single parent, or I'm looking after the child's interests, or, you know, we are no longer together. Please try to help the child in the deficiency he or she may be having, which maybe sometimes perhaps because of the dispute that the parents have, or otherwise, that the child may need some special attention. And that's one very important thing in making choice of institutions, where educational institutions where the child should be going to. And that will take a long way in terms of helping the child to grow in a healthy manner. And also the child must understand that he or she is may have an inclination towards either of the parents, but he is a product and he comes into this world as a child of both the parents. And that must also be inculcated by maybe the educational institution as well, maybe the, you know, maybe the parents themselves, or whatever. And therefore, once the child is growing up, you must allow the child to grow up in a manner which is best in his or her best interest, which will help the child to be a healthy individual in the society.
Right. No, this is your last point was pretty interesting. Yes, Gazal.
I just wanted to add one point. I think that's a very, very pertinent point made by Dr. Rao. And we have a lot of members on the Milaap group who have brought up this again and again. They have been, while their legal process has been on, they've been cut out from their child's school regime and schedule, taken off the SMS database as a parent. And that, apart from being very hurtful, is also evidently cut them off from, you know, getting to know any whereabouts about their child. So I think that's a very strong message to educational institutions to support families who are going through a phase like separation and divorce. And it's something that a lot of people are grappling with. So I'm glad that you spoke about that.
And, you know, I mean, as a pointer towards other people, some people may have already got their relief and dealt with their matter. The parent must tell the lawyers, his or her lawyers, that they should bring this to the notice of the court, that despite the fact that either of the parent may have the custody of the child, that no wrongful attempt should be made by the parent having the custody of the child to cut off the child, or you know, work on his mind to prejudice him or her against the other spouse and such matters. And should be the child should be easily available to speak on the phone and be available to think. And the parent with whom the child is should be prevented by law and prohibited from doing any such things that should be brought into the court's proceedings, so that a special request should be made by the lawyer of the spouse with whom the child is not in custody, as to ensure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, I think lawyers have a huge role to play in this, and that is why I think one advice that I take away from this session is that we need to work very closely with the law fraternity, and I'm glad that Milaap has mentors like you by our side.
You see, the point is, sorry, Arjun, did you want to ask?
Please go ahead. Comment.
No, what I was saying is that it's a very important thing among the groups like yours, that you also discuss about legal professionals who look at family law as more of a greater service towards society, because it is a human issue, where the parents' responsibility and the child's growth is very important, more than perhaps the professional looking at his fee bills or the time being spent. So you have to look at those kind of professionals and create, you know, and flag them, shortlist them for people as to those. These are the professionals who do it as a service, as a form of service, rather than merely as billing time for their professional work. So that's a very important thing. And there are wonderful professionals everywhere who look at it as from a human point of view, and who will advise accordingly. And they are the ones that you should seek and and recommend to others. And there are some very fine professionals in the world, and many of them are women. I find that they are more caring, and they have a greater compassion towards the whole dispute for either of the parents, you may say, and they can bring about a greater, a joyful. It's not. I mean, I did a case in Shimla many years ago, and it was a terrible, terrible divorce. In Shimla, there was an IS officer who I recently learned is no more, and they had 13 cases amongst each other, 13 cases, and one daughter. And I quoted Oscar Wilde. Oscar Wilde says, "Divorces are made in heaven." And I told the court, my lords, this is a case where Oscar Wilde's saying that divorces are made in heaven applies, because it's better that these two separate, because there's number of proceedings that they have initiated against each other, criminal, trespass, kidnapping, everything. And beautiful city of Shimla, which is called, where there's some films like Love in Shimla and all made, and this is not a story. It's a full story full of hate. So I guess that's where coming to the point that it's better that they part happily, and they should be told, and spouses who are going through these difficulties must not harbor bitterness, must look at it as something that did not work out, and must look for. And if they're young enough, they must definitely be told there's life after this. And I've known many people, and this is the thing that I always advise any of my friends. I would say that, you can just go and see if you have somebody else who can share your life with you, instead of just thinking that this is the beginning and end. And that's a very important thing, that they should part in as amicable terms as they can.
Right. That's extremely relevant. The last line, especially. I mean, that's the because considering what you said earlier about where even schools have to get involved in making sure that children are not estranged.
You should reach out to schools. Your organization as Milaap should reach out to schools.
Because I have a couple of friends who've got young children, and when they go to try and see their child, young child who goes to school, but a young child. They've been told that the mother or the father, depends on the case, has left strict instructions about that the child should not be exposed to that other parent. Now, in that context, I'm sure the court would have given a different verdict, or at least given some kind of clarification on that. But while the court does order co-parenting, or as you said, that the child should be able to speak to the other parent on the phone and should be encouraged for visiting, etc., at whatever age and stage. How does this law get actually enforced on the ground? Because it's easy to say so, but actual enforcement.
You see, enforcement is like this. See, the legal process in India is a very torturous process. It's not easy. It's time consuming. It's expensive. And lawyers don't have enough time for you, and there are all kinds of problems. And that's where a wonderful organization like yours, Milaap, will come to the aid and rescue of people. And you, Gazal, you have your hands full if you decide to go to schools and reach out to them and say, here is a set of, we have something prescribed for the school to deal with children from separated parents. And this, they must get special attention. And here is a list of do's and don'ts which we would prescribe. And then you would find yourself as somebody who's completely, I hope other organizations are doing. But if you were to do that, I do not know, as a matter of fact. In fact, this has occurred to me while we are talking. And also suddenly something came to my mind about somebody who was talking about the schools of their children. So I think the schools require this kind of input. They require this kind of, we're talking to about how they can help. and how they could do that. And that would go a long way of doing that thing. Now, coming to the question of Arjun asking about the law courts. The law courts, you see, law is a slow process, but finally it will come and punish. Now, if either of the parents is actually violating what the court is trying to do, you will have to go back to the court and approach by way of an application and list out all the things that are not expected to be done by the parent who is heaping all these things on the child, and possibly the visitation rights may be withdrawn. If the parent is doing something so reprehensible towards the child, the court may say you no longer have visitation rights, and you must ask for that. You must say this is unhealthy for the child. Your lawyer must ask for it. Please make a note of this, Gazal. Wherever you find couples, one of them are saying, they say you ask your lawyer to go and bring it to the notice of the court and say withdraw the visitation rights or withdraw the custody of the child. If the child is in custody of one of the parents is not doing what is expected of him or her, you should say he or she doesn't deserve the custody of the child because he is unhealthy for the child or she. Now these kind of things will put the fear of God on the parent who is trying to do things where play around with the child's well-being and play around with the feelings of the spouse, the other spouse, and therefore the court may pronounce, it may pass strictures, it may impose penalties, it may do a variety of things. And courts, mind you, may be slow, but ultimately when it comes to doing the right thing, even after a long time, they do it. It's one must have faith in the institution, and one must have competent professionals to whom they can go. Sometimes, lawyers will also have to charge, they have to live. But it's better to go to a professional who is professional. He may charge a little more or whatever if it is extra mile. But most of them are kind and they can, help you with the court. Definitely you can get help from them. It's not as if...
I think that's a strong point to note for me as well as Milaap. And it is a pain point for a lot of parents not getting access to their children. I started Milaap from my own experience as an estranged mother, and I decided that it was time for me to look at giving back as well as helping people through this journey. Thank you so much, Dr. Rao. It's been a very interesting evening listening to you. Thank you so much for sharing your perspectives, for motivating us in our journey at Milaap with what we are doing. I think your message is going loud and clear to a lot of parents who are going through their life as a non-custodial parent, to a lot of educational institutions, to a lot of lawyers who are doing their service, as well as the entire public, to support families who are going through separation. Thank you so much for coming here and speaking to us. It's been really, really wonderful to connect all over again.
Thank you, Gazal. Thank you for inviting me. I thought, it's a wonderful initiative on your part, and I'm very happy to share with all of you my experience in this area. And I think it's a great initiative because I am not aware of organizations who are making an effort to work and help and counsel as couples, as well as, try to spread the word and enlighten people through this kind of discussions. And I think you have a lot of work cut out for you because you will be wanted by many educational institutions, and you will be, a much sought after person to enlighten them, and whatever experiences you've had as a result of our association, if you share them with other people, you will be doing a great service for bringing about a comfort and giving guidance to people who would be completely in dark in how to deal with such situations, and therefore it's a great service to society. I wish you all the best and congratulations for taking up this initiative. Congratulations to Arjun as well, whom I have also known for many years now. And both of you can do a great, great job of this initiative. Thank you very much again for inviting me.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Rao.
you so much. Thank you, Arjun, for being such a strong champion, such a strong voice for co-parenting. I think you can inspire a lot of people around you, especially with your, given your experience and your history with media, as well as your own personal journey. To thank you to everybody who's watching us, to listening to us. If you are a non-custodial parent or a family, you can find us on Facebook and join this group which we are talking about. It will give you a safe private space to connect with a lot of not just parents, but as well as social workers, counselors, psychologists who are there to share their expert advice. If you are somebody who supports the cause of co-parenting, please join us on our Facebook page. Please take this message to the wider public. Accept and embrace families who are going through this experience, because your support means a lot. With that, I'll sign off and say thank you to everybody. I think we have a very important mission with all of us, whether we are a non-custodial parent or a custodial parent or general public. Thank you so much, and God bless.